Hello and welcome. My name is George Schlakek, and this is another video. It's a follow-up to the touring bike videos that I did. My touring bike, it's a 1980s mountain bike that I converted, but it didn't really take a whole lot to convert it. That's because those 1980s mountain bikes, they are basically road bikes with bigger tires. Okay, there are some things that perhaps they're not suited for touring just perfectly, but if you can find one of those bikes, you'll be laughing. Really, it's that simple, but it has to be in good shape. And, well, the better your components, the better the bike. And I've had questions recently about someone trying to find a bike like that, and all the ones she could find were stamped dropouts. I'll get to that, but the preference I have is for forged dropout for obvious reasons. You're packing a load on that bike, so if there's any chance of your wheel shifting within the dropouts when you hit a bump or railroad tracks or anything like that, that's bad. I mean, I've had that happen to me like way back when I had a different bike, and well, what it took was some really thick knurled washers that solved the problem for me. But when you have those forged dropouts, you don't even have to worry about that because the wheel just goes in place. It's the same on both sides, and the derailleur hanger is independent of the dropouts. Really, there's just, I'll show you. Okay, here we're looking at my all-time favorite touring bike. I just hosed this off because it was still super dirty from a trip. See this dropout? It's forged. It's nice and thick. When we look at the other side, it's the same way. You pretty much pull it all the way back, and that means whatever happens, nothing will move. Even if to center it you have to jiggle it a bit, this gives it enough support. Even if you have quite a bit of load on your rear rack, this will be fine. Now the derailleur on here is not original. It's a Sun Tour model that I put on there. Probably need to do some work on this cable. The way it's bent, I don't like it, but it hasn't caused me any problems. But you see the hanger, it's not changeable on this bike. It's part of the frame, and there may be some people say that you know, once you bend it, it's never going to be right, but the truth is, I haven't had any problems with this, and this bike has seen a lot of use. Speaking of dropouts, the front ones are also forged, but there's one beef I have with this one, and I don't know if you can tell what this is. Look at the way I mounted my front rack. See, I had to use a nut as a spacer, and the eyelet is in back only. I wish I had one in the front too, because then that's where I would have put my rack without the spacer. Due to the thickness of the fork, as you can see, there's no other way. Some forks don't have this at all. Then you're putting clamps around here. Well, you're not supposed to put a lot of weight on your front rack, but I prefer if it's mounted in a solid way. So what I did, I just modified a rear rack. Doesn't look good, but it's rock solid. When it comes to brakes on these 1980s bike, typically they'll be a cantilever. In my case, this has caused me a little bit of problems with this fender. What I'm gonna do about it is probably just cut the fender here. Even with this modification, I'm still experiencing a problem. But this very front part of the fender, it's only needed because the way I mounted it here. And that's because there's no fender stay. So for me, the main reason why I prefer these 1980s bikes for touring is the geometry. It's just like a road bike, except you got thicker tires on it. Even the wheelbase is built that way. You can see how far the rear wheel is from the seat tube. Another reason I like these 1980s bikes are these shifters. They're basically all aluminum. You will not find this on later bikes. I actually think you'll have a really hard time finding them at all these days. This, my friends, is built for life. and it'll probably last forever. Another modification to this bike, it's obviously the handlebars. They are less aggressive than it would be on a bike that is used for mountain biking or downhill, single track, whatever. And also the stem is a rising stem, so I can sit upright. Next, I want to show you my seat. Even though it looks horrible right now, it definitely needs some TLC. We've been on a tour and we had some rain, let me put it that way. It's not ruined, but it doesn't look as good as it should. So over the years, there have been minor maintenance issues with this bike. I had to replace the rear derailleur simply because I wore out another one that was not a high-end one. It was a kind of really cheap one. This one is a little bit better, but does it really work better? It's about the same, I'll be honest there. And the thing is, because I'm touring with this bike, heavily loaded, and I want to be able to climb mountains, I have a freewheel on there that has a mega range. So there have been some comments over the years that say, well, this mega range is like too much of a jump between the sprockets and whatever. Well, it may sure be the case, but it's worked for me, guys. And it's kind of like when you get used to your bike, you know how you shift it, you know when you have to shift, and like these are friction shifters. So it is all in your thumbs. There's no click, click, click index shifting. And yeah, on occasion it can happen to me that, say, I switch from my winter bike to this bike, or whatever, you know, I haven't ridden this in a while, or I haven't ridden it with a load or whatever. Then there's a little bit of an adaptation process or period when things don't go as smoothly as usual. But once you start riding, and especially on a tour when it's pretty much the same every day, this will work super smooth. Only problem with these bikes today, because this is 40 years old, where are you going to get it? Where are you going to find it? Check out your community bike shops. Here in Edmonton, we have Bike Edmonton. They refurbish old bikes, but you can also buy parts of bikes. You can buy frames. You can buy bikes that have been donated, sometimes for really cheap. But then, of course, you're looking at a project, and the name of the game is building your own bike. That's not for everybody, but it's a good way to get to know your bike really, really well, so that when you're out on the road and something goes wrong, well, first of all, you know exactly what tools you need to pack, and you will also be able to fix it right there and then easily. And if you should have to go to a bike shop, you'll be able to pinpoint it to them and save money that way. Now, what if you can't find a 1980s bike, or even a different model, 1990s, whatever you have, with forged dropouts? Is it still advisable to use it for touring? And I don't want to say that I have all the answers on that, but I can show you one modification that I did on my winter bike, and I have full confidence in that. I would pack like 50 pounds of luggage on there, no problem at all. I'll show you what it is. Okay, well, this looks really bad, looks really rusty right now. This is a bike I use in the winter time, guys. Well, it always looks like that, unfortunately. They put salt on the road here in the winter. But see, this derailleur is completely different. The derailleur hanger is part of the derailleur. There's a bolt here that has a special nut on the inside that holds it in the dropout, and that limits the travel of the axle on this side. Normally, in order to allow for adjustment and whatnot, on these dropouts, the non-drive side can travel pretty much freely and further back and whatnot. And the problem with those, when you're loading weight on it, can be that you don't get it quite tight enough. A solution can be, like I said before, there could be a thick knurled washer that holds it in place even when you hit a set of railroad tracks or a big bump or something. But it's happened to me that the wheel shifted, especially on this bike. When I first had this bike, I had this problem, even without a load. But instead of just adding washers, what I did, and I have 100% confidence in that, is this. I found an old derailleur. This is upside down, guys, but see, this is where it's cut off. So I just simply used that piece that holds it in the dropout to make a thicker dropout. It works the exact same way as on the other side. It limits the travel. So ideally, you just pull it right back and it's aligned and everything. If not, this is a lot thicker and holds a lot better than the dropout by itself. So guys, if you cannot find a bike with forged dropouts, well, I would still advise you to keep looking for a while. But say you have a good bike, or you have a bike that you like and it happens to be those stamped dropouts, this is a modification you can do. It'll definitely work. And if not, go somewhere where they sell good hardware, and a thick knurled washer will also do the trick. So I hope this information helps you to find the right touring bike for yourself. I highly recommend 1980s bikes, 1990s bikes. There are plenty of them around. They're also good. What I don't like so much, and you might find this weird because it's the standard today, is index shifters. I prefer friction shifters for touring simply because, you know, there's less maintenance to do. You can basically adjust them with your thumb. Something happens, you get a piece of dirt in somewhere, it's not a big deal. When you have index shifters, they might not shift correctly, and then you have to stop and figure it out. One nice feature about the 1990s mountain bikes can be the sloped tube. So, you know, it's easier to get on and off, and when you stop at a light, you don't have the tube pressing against your privates there. So, like I said, I hope this video helps you out. If it does, you can share it, you can give it a thumbs up, perhaps subscribe to my channel. And if you haven't seen my original video that I made about my touring bike, then you can check that out right here. All the best, happy trails, and I'll see you in another video.